Hi, everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we are back today to talk about Star Trek Best Destiny, a novel by Diane Carey. This is the sequel to Final Frontier, which I read before this. Now, this book took me a little bit longer than I would have liked to read, and there are many good reasons why. We started it on the 15th of June and just finished it today, July the 4th, America's Independence Day. And what better way to celebrate Independence Day than to sit down and have a nice talk about Diane Carey's Best Destiny. Uh, as usual, let's spend some time looking at the book itself. Glad to have this in the hardcover, which I think is how it was originally released anyway. But there's the front. And then from the back, they have like a whole section of the book here. So we won't read through that. Instead, we'll go to the inside, where they give a little bit of a blurb here. First off, they start talking about other hardcover books. To date, there have been 4 smash Star Trek Original Series hardcovers: Spock's World, The Lost Years, Prime Directive, and Probe, and 2 Star Trek Next Generation hardcovers, Reunion and Imzadi. Both very good. Each of these much anticipated books has been a huge New York Times bestseller, providing exciting, epic stories that have thrilled readers with the best in science fiction. Now, Pocket Books is proud to present Best Destiny, the incredible story of James Kirk as a teenager on his first adventure in space with his father, George Samuel Kirk, an adventure which gives young James his first look at a starship called the USS Enterprise. In Best Destiny, noted Star Trek author Diane Carey mixes the past and the present of Star Trek in an epic-length story of unparalleled danger and momentous self-discovery. A story that gives a first-ever look at the personal history of the man who would later command the Starship Enterprise, James T. Kirk. As James T. Kirk prepares to retire from a long and illustrious Starfleet career, events in the distant part of the Federation draw him back to a part of the galaxy he had last visited as a young man, a mysterious world called Fairmond, whose name takes Kirk on a journey back to his youth. At 16, Kirk is troubled, estranged from his father, and he has a bleak future. However, a trip into space with Kirk's father George and Starfleet legend Captain Robert April changes James Kirk's life forever. When a simple voyage becomes a deadly trap, soon Kirk and his father find themselves fighting for their lives against a vicious and powerful enemy. Before the voyage ends, father and son will face life and death together, and James T. Kirk will get a glimpse of his future and his own best destiny. Of course, this was written by Diane Carey. Diane Carey is a mid-Michigan native with 14 novels published to date, including 4 previous Star Trek novels from Pocket Books, a 3-book Civil War series, and 2 hardcovers. Diane plays the bagpipes and the tuba. Incredible. And there's some more information about her here as well. Love Diane Carey's work. I've read so much. Many of her books, many of her Star Trek books, and looking forward to continuing that as well. And actually, kind of a funny little coincidence that I'm reading this book now when this whole channel started 5 years ago, I think in about a week or so, when I read and reviewed Diane Carey's Ghost Ship, TNG number 1. So it's kind of, we're coming right back around again, so I have decided to continue on with some, anyway, more Diane Carey up to come here, but we're going to talk today about Best Destiny. And that blurb on the inside cover was way too wordy. They kind of told way too much. So again, don't read those if you can avoid it. Now, from the amazing book about books here, we have Diane kind of given the backstory here. And it says that Pocket Books asked her to write about Kirk's first mission in deep space. And I kind of like how this came about. Diane Carey is a sailor, and by chance she was put aboard a ship that kind of was a program for like troubled teens or whatever, where they were brought aboard and they worked aboard this ship. And that kind of gave her the idea that that's how, a young James Kirk would be. This kind of more troubled, rebellious teen. So that's how she wrote him. And it really works out well. It's very, very, very interesting. And I kind of like how her history as a sailor kind of played into that too. And even plays into the book as well. You can see certain parts there, that she's definitely wrote in because of her history there. So, but what is Best Destiny? What do you have here? You have an origin story, right? You have basically the origin of James Kirk as we know him. The book starts out with a young Kirk, and they don't call him James. He's a young Jimmy Kirk, right? He's a different character altogether, basically. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. The story actually starts out with the framework set up after the undiscovered country. So they are getting ready to retire the Enterprise A. The next, group of ships is coming out, and they're moving on, and they get this an emergency. No, they detect this what's called a flushback, which basically means that basically the only reason this happens is an antimatter explosion. So they have to race out to Fairmont where they detect this, and that's the beginning framing of the story. And then the planet Fairmont, of course, brings back the memories, and then that's how they kind of dive into the actual story. And really, it really is just framing. The story with the Enterprise A is just the beginning and end, and like just tiny little bits in here and there. But really, the whole story is Jimmy Kirk turning from this kind of like this little brat into James Kirk, and it's I guess what I like about it most, without getting into too much spoilers, is it is very much like a desperation story in space, which is great. They're just hanging on by the skin of their teeth. They're Starfleet officers, and they're gonna get by, and they just, it's just amazing what they're able to do when, they're put up against the worst situation they could be in. So, and really, man. All right, without getting into too much detail, it is definitely one of those stories where like you're rooting kind of like for the underdog, like they're in trouble, everything is going wrong for them, and then you've got this young Jimmy Kirk who's like, man, she does a good job of making you not like him. His first thing when he walks onto the bridge of the Enterprise, and we'll get into that later how he gets there, is this place stinks, right? So like immediately you're like, oh, come on, man, like you're put off by him, and just further on through the story, but then there's this turn, the tragedy kind of induces, and it just turns around. And then he becomes, you can kind of see him seeing who he wants to become, and becoming this other person. In the story, you have his dad, George Kirk, very interesting character too, very fiery. You have Robert April, who's kind of like the opposite of George Kirk, very kind of like just like your old grandpa or something, just a very nice, and I really liked his character too in Final Frontier, and just I wish I could see actually more Robert April stories, maybe even written by Diane Carey. I don't know if there are, but he was a great character. Carlos Florida is in it. He is a great character. Drake from the last book is in it, and then they have this kind of rogues gallery, this crew of this pirate ship, for lack of a better term, that they're up against too. So I had a lot of fun with it. I definitely could have read it faster, but in the middle of reading it, I did have to watch 40 episodes of Star Trek Prodigy, which was totally worthwhile. So that kind of broke into the book a little bit, but didn't detract at all from it, because it was just very well done. So yeah, so Best Destiny, it's a good ride. Very much a desperation journey. If you're into that kind of thing, these people like barely surviving by the skin of their teeth in space, that's what you're going to get here. And some pretty interesting, I guess, science in it as well, too, that I enjoyed. So just a little bit of mix of everything that makes a good Trek book good. So glad to have read it. Now, if you don't want to be spoiled, you can go ahead and just take off now, because I want to talk a little bit more about some of the details in this story that I guess I enjoyed. It will just kind of give you the gist of the main, the story as we typically do. So, okay, so the book starts out with Jimmy Kirk leading this young group of, I don't know, they didn't really seem like bad kids at first, just this young group of kids, and basically they're running away from home, which is kind of crazy to think about, but even like in that time, like they were going to run away from home, and they were going to get aboard a ship, and from there just kind of, not a starship either, an actual ship on the ocean. That was their plan. But the story starts out with them crossing this kind of old, worn out rope bridge, and you can kind of see, like, right at the beginning, and they don't lean into him being such a jerk in the first chapters, so you kind of get to see him leading this young group of kids. You get to see him kind of showing his character a little bit, and he gets them across even though there's a little bit of trouble. They are able to get to a port somewhere, and they're able to get aboard a ship as well, and that's kind of where things come to an end, and they are caught by his father, George Kirk, who comes aboard the ship in like a Starfleet shuttle, picks them all up, takes them back, and gives them the what for, basically, right? So he's got trouble on his hands, and he's talking it over with his wife. What are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? But Robert April helps him out, and they come up with a plan to bring him into space on what's supposed to be kind of just a basic mission. They're going to go to the planet Pharamond. There's going to be a ribbon cutting ceremony. Nothing too crazy, right? But the exciting part about this that they didn't tell George is that they're taking the Enterprise, right? And so the first book in this series, Final Frontier, features the kind of the first voyage of the Enterprise before it's even called the Enterprise. So now it's been through its paces. It's done a few things here, and now they're going to be taking it out again. But this story is not about the Enterprise at all, which I thought was really cool too, because as soon as they kind of get off on their way, and going back to the whole time, Jimmy Kirk is acting like just a real jerk, right? He's acting like none of this is special, none of this is exciting. George Kirk is like blown away. They're getting to go back on the Enterprise, and he's like, oh, well, whatever. But even through his cover of, a young teen who hates everything, even he is like in awe of the Enterprise when he first sees it. So I did like that as well. That was very cool. So they get to the Enterprise, but the Enterprise is off on its own mission. So they set off in their own little, kind of like a research shuttlecraft. Well, much bigger than a shuttlecraft. It's got like a crew section, a hold, a science section, and they are heading towards Pharamond. And on the way, they're going to go by and observe this trinary star system, right? And it's got basically 2 stars orbiting like another giant star. So they've brought along some science officers that are super excited to see this. And again, like Jimmy Kirk is all like, oh, well, what's so exciting about this, right? Now, this is when the story takes like a total 180 turn. It's just kind of all easy going from here. And the scientists are up in the science pod, which is kind of on top of the thing. They're taking readings and they're observing the thing, when all of a sudden this ship comes out of the blue zone, as they call it, which is this area which they didn't think that they could go into, or that anyone could go into, right? And basically just decimates them, blows up the science pod, knocks the ship on its butt. They look up into the pod, and all the science officers are killed. And this is like, Jimmy Kirk's first kind of view of real battle. Well, not really. There was another story previous to this, but they're all killed. The craft itself, like the controls, everything like that, is damaged. So they have to evacuate into the cargo hold. And when they get in there, they're able to kind of shield. It's like a shielded space, so their life signs are not readable. So now the pirate ship thinks that they've done their job, like they've knocked them out, they've killed them, and they start towing them away so that they can cut them apart and do whatever they need to do. But this is Starfleet, right? They're not going to give up so easy, so they start doing whatever they can just down in the hold to, first off, regain control of the ship. So they're like wiring into the walls, and they're like setting up little portable monitors, and they're basically turning the hold into this little makeshift bridge. So first off, that was really cool. I loved how they were able to do that and regain some kind of control of the ship. And then from there, they're able to start fighting back. And I think they're able to they blast the pirate ship with lasers unexpectedly, and then when the pirate ship realizes that they're still alive, they realize that they need to get rid of them. And this is when they start giving you a glimpse onto the ship, and it's like this ragtag crew. There's an Andorian, a Klingon, a bunch of humans, but the main stars of the show are Big Rex Moss, and then the captain, whose name escapes me. But it doesn't matter, because Rex Moss shoots him with his laser pistol. Or Big Rex Moss, I should say. So there's some dissent on this ship, but the main thing to kind of pull away is this Rex Moss is this teenage kid, but he has somehow designed the shield system that lets these pirates go in and out of this blue zone and attack people. So there's been a history of people getting lost in this area. Now they know who's been doing it. And once George Kirk and Robert April realize this, they realize they got to take these people down too, So they're trying to figure out ways they can do that. And when they get fired back upon, they're trying to, they're locking things down. They're shutting down like the system, so there's a fire going on or something. And one of the crew members, a girl named Veronica Hall, has to kind of stop Jimmy from doing something, which makes, and then she gets in the way of the blast, and then she gets hurt terribly. And then that's kind of this kind of guilt that weighs on him for the rest of the story as well. Oh, also, she has a detachable hand, which comes into the story later too. But when the people of basically the Starfleet realize what's happening, that they're being dragged into the blue, they decide that they need to at least try to save somebody. So they start working, and they turn an airlock into an escape pod for Jimmy Kirk. And they put him in there, and they're ready to shove him off, and then they plan on flying into the ship to destroy it. They're going to kind of give their last boost to blow up the ship. So all this is really crazy, right? So when they get out and they get into the escape pod or whatever, Jimmy Kirk has a change of heart. He doesn't want to see them give up their lives for him, so he tries to give up his life for them by flying into the engine of the ship. He miscalculates, he doesn't quite make it, and instead goes right in through a hole in the hull and into their hold. See, they've already been kind of beat up as well, too, with a few different things. So now Jimmy Kirk is aboard the ship, a saboteur, a worm in the apple, as both he says and Rex Moss says. He starts sabotaging things. He finds their gravity drive, what kind of holds everything in place, finds a fire extinguisher, and then turns it into a rocket, and boom, there you go, blows it up, takes out their gravity. This is when they realize that he's still alive over there. Now they have to find a way to get over there, right? So they start slowly creeping up, kind of so slow they can't be noticed. And then their ship gets close enough where they're able to climb out, dock, and go in through, right? So now they're aboard the ship. So now you have George kind of leading the charge, right, with Robert and the injured officers behind. And just a really fun part here in the end where George is like playing sabotage on the ship. Jimmy's been caught, Jimmy is turning into James here quickly in the story. You know, you can kind of see the change that he's going through, right? Uh, at this point, he does have that lady's detachable hand, and actually uses that to kill somebody. He like puts it on their neck and he squeezes them, right? So like it gets pretty dark in this book. There's a lot of violence upon the ship here in the kind of last part of it. So, but in the end, they're able to basically. Jimmy is able to get under this young Rex Moss's skin enough to kind of work him up, and they're able to take over between him and his dad, right? It's kind of a funny scene too. Like right at the very end, when this Rex Moss is getting ready to jump and turn off the shields, which would kill all of them, he's got his hands tied, right? His hands are tied like this. So he does his first ever classic double axe handle to the back to take the guy out in the last minutes. I thought that was very funny. Okay, I'm definitely missing out on a lot, but that's kind of the gist of the story there. Again, there's so much good like desperation engineering that they're doing to try to save themselves in there, and I just love all of that. That's just so well done. Again, the book comes to an end with the bookend of the Enterprise A, and they get to Fairmond, and who do they find there? None other than Rex Moss, now older, and he has kind of found some technology on this planet that he's used to shut down the what do they call it? It's in here. The Bill of Rights, which is a Constitution class ship. So they've shut it down. They've kind of locked it into place there, and he thinks that he's found a gigantic transporter, and he plans to transport the Bill of Rights back to Earth, basically, to kind of make his way in the world, you know, to prove he's an awesome scientist or whatever, right? Spock looks at the thing for like 15 minutes, and he's like, well, it is a big transporter, but the power and the control is all gone. So if he tries to do it, it's going to be bad. I mean, they try to tell him that, and he disagrees. He's very smart. So he tries to do it anyway, and things are bad. Basically, the whole planet starts melting. Kirk kind of talks him down, you know, and just kind of tells him, you know, you've really screwed up here. And that's kind of the end of it, too. They all get beamed up to the Bill of Rights. The Enterprise swoops in, extends its shields. The Bill of Rights is able to power back up again, and then tractor the Enterprise out of there before the planet explodes. End of story. A good ending, too, you know? So, the Enterprise A part was just a bookend. The real story was the story of Starfleet surviving against all odds against this pirate crew. That's the real story here. And also, I mean, on it, of course, the story of Jimmy Kirk as this jerky young teenage kid, seeing people sacrifice themselves, seeing people put themselves on the line, and seeing what it means to be, you know, a Starfleet officer. And there's something interesting that was said at the end that I really like too, is Robert April tells him, you know, Jimmy, don't lose that little bit of gangster that you have in you, you know, because a Starfleet captain is going to need that, especially going into this new era, you know. And he does. He kind of keeps that little bit of gangster in him, you know, all the way through his career. So, man, that was a fun book, and it was fun to talk about. So, thanks for hanging out with me and talking about Star Trek Best Destiny. I'm going to go outside and shoot off a bunch of fireworks with my kids and family now. As always, everybody, live long and prosper. Have a happy 4th, and we'll see you next time.